Okay, guys. So some of you are not able to actually work with the local host, local development. So what we will do is, before we actually get started with what day 3 is, we will see how we can preview our application inside Salesforce environment, and then we will come back over here for the agenda. So previewing the application inside Salesforce environment will not take much time. So let's quickly get back to our project here. The very first thing that we need to do is, once you are done with your Salesforce Lightning Web Component development, you don't have anything to display. What you can do is, you just need to use Control Shift P or Command Shift P based on the operating system that you are using, and then search for a command called sfdx force like push source to default scratch org. Because we are using the concept of a scratch org, we need to use this command. And then as soon as you use this command, it is going to find out what are all the components which has been created, or any component if that component has been modified, and then it will deploy all the components to Salesforce org. Once these components are deployed to Salesforce org, we need to do one thing inside Salesforce is, that we will see here. You can see the components are deployed over here. You can see this is one component, and this is another component, and this is another component that we have. Okay, now once we have deployed it, we will just quickly open this org. How we will open this is, you will see the name of your scratch org over here on the bottom, and then there will be some icon. You just need to say okay, click on that icon which is for open org. And once you click on this icon, it is going to open your Salesforce org. You don't need to type any command or anything. It is going to open whatever the scratch org is attached to your Salesforce this Visual Studio project, and it will also automatically open your scratch org over here. So once you are here inside Salesforce Lightning, in what you need to do is just click on this gear icon and go to developer console. So because there is no such thing called LWC application, we cannot create a LWC application. And as we are not using LWC inside any Lightning app builder, so we will see how to preview this with the help of our application. So go ahead, click on File, New, and then you need to select Lightning application, and you can give the name of your application, say that first application. This is just the only component which we will be creating for Aura. Okay, now here, whatever the component you want to preview, for example, you want to preview the component which we have created is for a variable component. Okay, so just copy the name of your component, and then get back to your Aura application. Use the syntax like this: C colon the name of your component. Okay, C is going to be the default namespace. Colon is something we need to tell. Okay, under C there is a component called sorry, under namespace C there is a component called variable component. And once you click on preview over here, it is going to display the information. And if I click on this button which says that click me, it is going to display the details. Okay, now you might be thinking that okay, this data is displaying, but this is not quite good. It's not good in terms of UI, right? The CSS is not working at all. The button is not in kind of blue, whatever we used to see over here in our local development. Okay, and like this, the data is not coming this way. So to do that, we just need to make a very small change over here inside application. We will say okay, just go ahead and extend the SLDS. Okay, force colon SLDS. This is again a class which we are extending. So what will happen is, as soon as we extend this particular class, all the SLDS CSS will start applying to the component, to the element, whatever we are putting inside this application. Now if you get back, it will, as soon as you save the application, it will refresh the page. And now you can see here, it is quite clear difference between the earlier output and this outcome. Even still there is no such space on the you'll say that from left or from the top, and even that kind of CSS is not applied, right? So if you want to apply some CSS like padding or something, even you can directly use this particular component inside a division tag. Okay, and then you can have your own style over here. Style tag, you can just put, okay, you wanted to have something margin from top, you wanted to have 20 px, and then you wanted to have margin from left, margin or padding you want to do, whatever you wanted to give, you can just give it over here in the css in the style tag and save the page. It will refresh your application and you will see there is a clear difference like this. But if you want to use some standard css which are provided by Salesforce, so what you can do is just you can search for slds spacing on that kind of things. So sorry, it should be slds, and you will find padding, right? You will find style the component. So lightningdesignsystem.com is a place where you will find the css for the various components. If you see over here under utilities, if you see under accessibilities or component blueprints, you will see what all you can do over here. You go to badges and you will see how the outcome is going to look like, right? So this is what the css is there, right? So you can just use this particular css, say that I wanted to use this particular css, this particular code, and then as soon as I go there into my application, paste it over here, we will see after saving this, our application will refresh. Okay, there is nothing such happening over here. So this css is not quite, let's say we are trying to use some cards over here, this kind of information we wanted to display, then we just go there, find the code, we just copy it and paste it, right? So this is basically the only like intention behind showing you this is to let you know that okay, there is such some place in Salesforce from where you will get multiple things to learn. Okay, while we are saving this, we are getting this svg error. So if you remove this, this will work fine. You can see here, this is how this is working. Then we have got accounts, we've got a button, we've got another button. So that's just one place where you can get multiple things. Even you can have icons or something. So this is what I wanted to show you before we actually start with the agenda for day 3, because now here in your developer console in the application, let me remove all this we don't need. Okay, suppose that now
Manan this side, I've just joined. While that, is there anything I missed apart from this coding, like deployment part? I missed it.
yeah, so from where you started?
From the one where you have started creating the application in, say,
Okay,
in developer console.
so you are open for this application and all, right? You saw how to create the application, how to put the components and all those things.
Yes.
Yeah, so there is one step which is for deploying the component. So once you are done with your component development, okay, what you need to do is use command palette with the help of Control Shift P or Command Shift P, and then search for a command called push. So you will see a command something which says that sfdx push source to default scratch off, and then select this command. So what it will do is it will try to deploy all the components which has been created and not deployed, or the component which are already deployed but change something. Okay, so that's what it is going to. So currently you see there is nothing because we have nothing to deploy. But if I change it and then again I try to run the command, it will try to update this particular component. We'll see over here as an outcome. We'll see it will try to update that.
So default scratch log is different apart from the sandbox which we create, is it?
Yeah, that's different. Okay, so you can say here now I have changed one component. It says that okay, state change has changed. This is the component, what is the type and what are the full path. Okay, so that's how it actually works. So now what we will talk about here today is we will see okay how we can go through with a list and how we can iterate with the list. Then what are slots in LWC? Just the definition. Will not seeing these slots into the action. We will see how slots works in the coming videos. Then we will talk about how we can call a client-side JavaScript method from a button, as well as from the browser events like on change, or say that on hover, on double click, on focus out or focus gain kind of events. We will see that. Then we will talk about getter setter in LWC. We'll also see a very good example for getter setter. Then we will talk about how if else works, basically the conditional rendering in Salesforce, and my favorite example with Tom and Jerry. So we'll see how conditional rendering works with Tom and Jerry. Okay. And then at the end, again, we will have some couple of questions. After that, there will be assignment part for today's cell. Okay. So let's quickly talk about how we iterate with the list. So in previous session, when we were talking about the variables, we have arrays, we have array of records, which we wanted to display in our system, in our HTML file, but we were getting some object which were telling us, okay, you try to print the list, and these are number of records you have inside that list, but I don't know what information you wanted to print. So for that, we have got one directive which we have also discussed, is for colon each. Okay, what this for each does is it actually iterates through an array. Okay, it takes the input as an array, and then it iterates one by one. Okay, and then once it iterates one by one, and then you can display that information inside HTML. So if you see over here, this is basically just an example which I have shown you. This is lightning card. You can just ignore this. UL, you can also ignore this. This part is the only part that we need to focus on, is where we are using for each directive. Okay, so the key thing, or we'll say the important part here we need to focus on, is for each will always work inside template. You cannot use for each for a division or a UL or lightning card. Okay, you always have to use this syntax. You say template for colon each. This is a directive. This is your array. Okay, context is an array. It could be your variable which is there inside JavaScript, and the variable name can be anything. For item, this is going to be single record inside the array. Okay, suppose that there are 10 records inside this context. This for item is going to contains 10 contact, every time a different contact record. Okay, and then inside template you can use anything. You can use images, you can use some other components, you can use cards, whatever you want. The HTML templates you can use inside. The very first step, or we'll say that every root step after this template will have a unique key. Okay, and the attribute will always be key. It will always be unique. Okay, the reason like it will always be unique, because whenever you have multiple records over, say that you have got 10 records, or you have got 100 of records, what will happen if you try to click, say that number one record, if you try to click on this record, how Salesforce will identify, or how LWC will identify which record has been clicked, where this key, but this key comes into the picture. So based on this key, Salesforce identified, okay, if I have 100 records, this is the record which has been clicked, or this is the record where the user wanted to make some changes. So that is where this key comes into the picture, and this key will always be the unique, and cannot be cannot be like index. There is one more directory which says that for index, that will not be here, that will not act as a key over here. Even if you want, it is not going to prevent you, but as a best practice, we never use index. We always use some attributes which is there in our array, at array, or in our object. So that is just a separate just a simple structure, how your for each LWC for each is going to work. Now we will talk about just how we are going to we have very simple things over here. Simple, say that we have an array over here. This is this time we have a simple string of arrays. Okay, array of strings, but we might have array of objects, we might have array of arrays. How we can iterate this? Okay, so now here we have got this template for each. So for contacts, okay, for this for each, uh, this is going to be for each whatever the array we have got, like items, whatever we have given over here, this is going to be, this complete array will be there as a part of for each. And then there is something called item. This is for each item. Just a second guys, I'll put this image one by one, side by side. Okay, Okay, so you see here over here. Now we have this code. So for this, for each whatever the array is, so this is going to take this complete value A1, B2, and C3. And for contact, for the first time, it is going to take A1. Okay, then it is going to, the iteration is going to be there over here. Our cursor will be here under iteration 2, where this contact will be taking the value of B2, and then after that the iteration will be over here. The cursor will be changed to iteration 3, where the value will be C3. So if we try to implement like print this contact, because this is not an object, so we don't have this name and we don't have title. So if we try to print this, first time it will print A1, B2, and C3. That's how those array iteration works. Okay, so now let's quickly see over here as a demo. So for now, what I have is, I basically have this particular array which I'm going to use over here for the demo. And you will also get that array, because I will post the code to Salesforce. Okay, not Salesforce, to GitHub repository. The very first thing that we will do is, I'll create a component over here, and that I will say a list component. Okay, that is my component which I'm creating. You might want it to change the contact list or user list, whatever you can. So the very first thing that we need to do is, we need to create an array. Okay, we need to create an array. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to create a variable called users. Okay, I have this variable called users, which is a type of array. Okay, and then I don't need this because that is not going to be the one. Okay, so now I've got the arrays. Okay, I've got the users which have, I think, whatever number of, I think 5 to 6 records are there. Okay, and now if you see here under this array, what I have is, I have got yeah, here I've got ID, which will always be unique for each user. Then I've got email, then I've got first name, last name, and then there is an image. Okay, this is the image which is there. So now say that we wanted to display these information: email, first name, last name, and image for each user under iteration. So how we will do that? So to do this, what we will have to do is, we'll go to the component and we will say, okay, I have got a division over here. Now here I will use a standard CSS class which is provided by Salesforce in order to make the paddings, okay, around large. I'm just making, this is a CSS which is going to add the spacing all around throughout this screen, which is going to be large spacing. Okay, now here what we need is, we need for each. So how we will do is, we'll say, okay, template, then we will say that for colon each. Okay, this will come as a part of extension. Which variable we wanted to iterate is, the variable name is, okay, this is our JavaScript file, this is users. Okay, now then what will be the single user? Okay, what will be the single item which will say user? Okay, if you wanted to see the index, you can also have the variable of index, and this is your for each syntax. Okay, now here we wanted to display the information. Let's say that we wanted to display the information inside a paragraph. Okay, now if you see here, I have used a paragraph which is my topmost element immediate after template. I must need to specify key. Even if you hover over to this red sign, you will see there is a zigzag sign. You will see what it says: missing key for element paragraph. Okay, so we have to use key, and this will key will always be unique and dynamic. Okay, so what we wanted to have, we wanted to provide the key as a ID. We'll say that whatever the ID we have, it will always be unique. So we'll say, okay, go ahead and say we've got user as a variable over here. This is for item, this is a user, this is again going to act as a variable. So we'll say user dot ID. This is going to be our key. Now suppose that if I add one more paragraph, then again I have to add a key value for this particular paragraph as well. So any paragraph, not paragraph, any HTML syntax, anything, it could be lightning tags, it could be your HTML tag, or any other component you're trying to call over here, you must need to specify a key. If you don't specify, it will throw the error. Now here we wanted to display some sort of user, say that we've got user, there is something called user first name and last name, and then email. Okay, So we'll say that, okay, we've got user first name, last name, user email, and then there is something called which is avatar. This is image, right? If you wanted to display the image, you can also say, okay, I wanted to display the image in the form of, say, that image src equal to whatever I've got, user.avatar. Okay, and I just save it. So this is how we are going to have. So instead of paragraph, what I will do is I'll make it as a division, and then I will also have a class over here, and I will say just have add a css for adding this is adding padding. Okay, slds padding is small, and then here each and every element I will add inside paragraph. So user first name and last name we can have inside a same paragraph. Then email, if you wanted to display the email in the email format, we'll also see. But for now, this is what we wanted to have. So what we did so far, we created a for each, provided our variable, and we say, okay, just go ahead and use a variable, a local variable for HTML, which is user, and then display the information about that user. If you wanted to use a index as well, so you can just go ahead and use index variable over here. So that index will be displayed, whatever the value for that index is. So for anyone have any doubt? And go ahead, deploy the changes to your org.
Amit, can you please explain that for column index is equal to index, this part?
This is going to give you at which particular index the record is. So the array always starts from 0. So this will be 0 index. This will be 1. This will be 2. So it is going to give you 0, 1, 2, whatever the index it is. So whatever the record you are accessing, it is going to find out the index inside this array, and it will print that index. So if we have say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 records here, I think we have total 6 records over here. So 6 records means 6 minus 1, there is total 5 indexes, 0 to 5. So it is if we are iterating, if we are displaying the information about first record, index will be 0. Then the cursor is going to move to the second record where index will be 1. So the index is going to be displayed as 1. So basically it is just going to tell you the position of that record inside the array.
Can we also display that index, Amit?
That's already being displayed.
Okay, it's by default. Okay. Okay.
And
You
for
can make
item, how
you
we
can make
return
any
user.
changes. Yeah, Sivang, you were saying something.
Yeah, for item, how we return user only.
You can name it anything. Let me name it as Amit. This is just a variable, like we create a variable, right?
Okay.
So this is just a placeholder. You can just use whatever the variable you want. So what I use is here, say that if I have users, so I'll say user, okay, because I have a list of users. Now I'm iterating a single user. If you have contacts, then you will say contact. If you have accounts, then you will say account. So that in that way, whenever some other developer is reading the code, they will easily understand, okay, how it is working.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, and then I'm just
Amit, I have a question.
yeah.
When you it's related to extension. When you write a curly braces, it's automatically type the index in a gray section. Do you use any extension for this?
Yeah, so there is one extension called GitHub Copilot. Okay, so this is basically extension provided by GitHub itself, not GitHub, provided by Microsoft, that actually reads the code, the millions and billions lines of code which are provided as a open source, and then it actually gives the suggestion for you. So GitHub Copilot is again a program it is a pilot program, so you might not have access to this. You have to request this, and if you get the access, then well and good. Otherwise you have to type it. So I was the member when this GitHub Copilot came, and then I was the member of testing team, so I had this access. So you can just, I just put the link, so any other people if you want. Okay, I have also GitHub Copilot video over my YouTube channels. I can share that as well. So this is like this extension is very helpful, but only if you have access to it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Amit, one question. In the second
Yeah.
line, it's a div class equal to SLDS hyphen M. In fourth line is SLDS hyphen P. So what's the difference?
M is margin and P is for padding. M is stands for margin and P stands for padding, and that is completely related to CSS. So I also don't have much deep idea on that.
Amit, one query, like here we are having the like variable name is 4 item Amit. So is that accessible only inside the template or outside template tag also we can use that one?
Inside template only, not outside. This is a local
Okay,
variable
but
for this template.
yeah, but we can use it like different division we can create and we can use it multiple times, but out of template we can't use.
Yeah,
Is that right?
if you have multiple divisions, you can do that, but you cannot use outside of template. If you try to use, it's
Thank you.
not going to give any error. Like if you say Amit, it's not going to give any error, but if you say Amit.id, it is going to give you the error.
Okay, sure. Thank you.
No problem. So we have just deployed this component to Salesforce. Okay. Now the only thing that we need to do is we just need to go to our Salesforce into our Aura application. Now I'm going to comment out this, and then I'll use my component, which is C:list component over here. Okay, and save it. So now I'm just using the list component which we have created. So you will see over here, this is the index, this is the name of user, and this is the email, and this is avatar. Okay, so that is basically how we display the information about a list. Now we have total 6 records. That's why the index is up to 5. There is another way to iterate the records over here, which we say that iterator. Okay, again, this iterator is also important, but not used most of the time. You are using ended up using this for each, and we'll say that do the work for us. The only difference between iterator is if you wanted to apply some special behavior for the first or last item in the list. Okay, so if you go to your outcome over here, so if you wanted to apply special behavior for this item and you wanted to apply special behavior for this item, then only we use iterator. Otherwise we don't need to use iterator. For each is best for every single use case. Now inside this iterator there are two properties. One is first and last. This returns a boolean value, either true or false. So if the item is first in the list, the first will be true. If the item is last in the list, it will be true. And based on this, we can basically apply the CSS for our particular items, which is we'll say that first item or last item. Then there is another attribute which says that index. Index is again going to work as the same, going to give you the number either 0, 1, 2, 3 like that. And then this is there is another attribute which says that value. This value is going to give you the access to your particular object or a string, and then after that you can access the property. So we'll see here, this is how it actually looks like. So again, this is a template. This is also going to work as an iterator. Okay, so we will say iterator colon it. Okay, this it is just a placeholder. You can name it anything, like we have been named Amit, we have named account, we have named contact, so we can name it as anything. Okay, then we must need to provide the key, because now we are trying to use a for loop. Then this is a placeholder, this is a variable, this is again a attribute which must be used, and then whatever the property we have, ID or first name or last name or like that. Okay, then if you see over here, what we are trying to do is we have a division, we have two divisions basically, which are using some conditional statement. We will you will get to know much about that once we talk about conditional statement. Then you will say, okay, it dot first, it will say if the element is first, then add this particular, then display this class list first. Okay, if the element is last, then add this class or display this class which is list last. Okay, so we have just used a CSS file. We can create a CSS and we can have the classes over there and then use that. So let's quickly see how we can do that. I have this list class with me. Okay, so this is the CSS class that I'll just use it inside the CSS component. So now here in our component so far, we haven't used CSS, right? We haven't used CSS. How to use the CSS? So say that we wanted to create some styling, some custom styling we don't want it to use, like we have the example over here. So we'll say, okay, I'll go ahead and inside this list component, select that parent folder, click on new, and then you have to use exact, you just say component.css. So this name should exact match with the name of your folder, and then .css is the extension. Hit enter, it will create the file. Now you can have over here, say that you wanted to apply some CSS for whole body, then you wanted to have some custom classes like this. Okay, so what it is doing is it is just creating a borderline with the black color. That's it. We will see what will be the outcome. For body, say that I wanted to apply some font family. It could be Courier New or something, and then I wanted to make this CSS style as an important, so that this particular CSS style will be affected. Okay, if I wanted to have some font size, I can also increase font size, say extra large. Okay, so this is just, there are two classes. Now I have got list first, and then I have got list last. Okay, in our component, let's quickly have one more division over here. I will just comment out this division so that we don't display the same information twice. This time what we need is, we need to use iterator. So what we will say is, we'll say iterator colon, instead of IT, I will say user, because that's a variable. And what property we have? Users. Users is the property inside JavaScript. Okay, we will say that, okay, just go ahead and say users. Now here, as I'm using a property as a user, so I have to make sure I'm making the changes over here. Now if I need to access the index, so how I will access? I'll say user.index. If I wanted to access the first name, so you'll say user.value, then I will say first name. Similarly, I'll say user.value.last name, and similarly for email and for avatar as well. Okay, there is one thing, if this item is first in the row and if the item is last in the row, we wanted to apply the CSS. So what we will do is, we'll again similar like example over the PPT, will say, okay, just have a division tag over here and use a class whatever the class we have. This is the first, okay, and then this is the last, and this is going to be list last. Now here, if we deploy this code, this CSS will apply for each piece of item. Okay, let's go ahead and deploy this without using that first and last attributes of our iterator.
Hello.
Yeah.
I have a question. Like for index, you haven't used value over there. So is it so like we have to use the values which we had mentioned in the list? For that only we have to use value?
Yep. So if you wanted to access the property, or if you wanted to display the value, okay, display the actual value of whatever we have. For example, This is our in our JavaScript, these are our actual values, right? These objects are our actual values. So for those only we will use value. For index, we can directly access the index, and similarly those two other attributes, first and last, we can directly access those as well.
Then in
Okay.
key also we need to use right value, that user.value.id, isn't it?
For key, okay, it should be user dot yes, it should be value.id. Yep. Because this is where we are using the data from JavaScript variable, so that should be there. Yeah. So the change is there now in Salesforce. Okay, we'll go ahead and let's quickly deploy this. So you can see here, right? Now this line is basically the border line kind of preparing for all the elements. Now if you want this line to the first element and this line to the last element and all the lines to go off, so how we will do is we will use conditional rendering over here, right? Tom and Jerry one we will also see, but here we are saying only display this division if this is the first element. Okay, so what we will do is we'll say, okay, go ahead and use if colon true, if user dot first. Okay, if the element in this users, okay, if the element in the users is the first element, then only this division will be displayed. Then we can say, okay, similarly we will say if true user colon lost. So if this is the last element, then this particular division will be displayed. If this is the first element, then only this division will be displayed. Otherwise, there will be no sign of this division element. And what this division is doing is just displaying a horizontal line. So now we have just deployed it. So you can clearly see the difference. There is a line on the top now and there is line on the bottom. So this is just a example that we have got for iterator where we are using this. Okay, we are also getting the indexes, we are getting the names, avatar, and every single thing is coming perfectly. So this is the only place where you wanted to use the iterator, but so far in my career, I haven't found a use case where I need to use this iterator. I have always used this for LWC for each, but you should be knowing as a developer, you should be knowing both the ways how to iterate the list. And this is how you actually use conditional rendering. Okay, now whenever you are trying to use for each or you are trying to use iterator, you should always use one element which says that one directory which says that if true and whatever your array. So if there is anything inside your array, then only go ahead and perform this particular logic. If there is nothing, if there is nothing inside your array, then don't try to do anything. Just skip and try to run on the other part of your code. So this is one thing which you always need to figure out. Okay, so for if and for if there are two things. Okay, so for if there is there will be always two things, either true or false. Okay, and this that's what we said that okay, we can say if colon true and if colon false, and here you will always have a expression will either return true or false, and expression that's what it is going to work. So in most of the cases, you like in some of the cases you will be using if true, and in some of the cases you will be using if false. Okay, that will completely be dependent on your use case. So now we talk about slots in LWC. Okay, so slot is again, it's a very simple small, or we'll say that very easy to read HTML tag. Okay, that we can use. We just type like other tags, paragraph or h1 or division, images or footer, headers, like these tags. This is again a simple tag which we can use like this slot, and we can also use some attributes. We can provide the name as say that okay, order. Okay, so that's what here we say. What we are saying is slot is a simple tag which is specified to have the content. Okay, inside slot we can define some content. Now in LWC, where we actually use slots is we use slots to pass the data into child component from parent component. That we will be seeing in the composition concept. There is, I think tomorrow we'll talk about what composition is. Tomorrow or day after tomorrow, we will see how exactly the slots works into the picture. But just as a high level overview, slots are used to send the data from parent component to the child component. Okay, now there are two type of slots, unnamed slot, and then there are got named slots. Okay, so if you use unnamed slots, that means you can have multiple slots, you are not giving any name. Okay, so if you have unnamed slots, so whatever the data you are trying to pass, it is going to pass the data for all the slots. So say that there are a total 2 unnamed slots inside your child component, and you're passing some data from your parent. So whatever the data you are passing, it is going to pass to both the slots. And in case of named slots, whatever the data you will be passing to the named slot, that data will be only displayed. This is just a theory part, so you might be getting confused over here. Need not to worry about that. We will see the practical example in coming sessions. There everything will be clear and we'll be able to see how exactly it is working fine. Okay, so now we have talked about these slots over here. I haven't used the example for this slot over here, how exactly we're passing. Then now let's talk about conditional rendering. Okay, most of the time, or we'll say that there is a requirement where we wanted to check if there is some data in a particular variable, then do something like this. If there is no data, then do something like this. Or we wanted to check if there is something, some value or some particular value for an attribute, then perform this logic. So that kind of thing, what we do is we do with the help of conditional rendering, which we say with the help of directive if colon true or if colon false. If colon true and if colon false will always use some expressions inside curly braces. That expression should be very simple expressions. You cannot provide some complex expression saying that, okay, check for user dot name and user dot is admin. You cannot provide that kind of expression over here. That expression should be very simple. You check if there is a name, or you check if the user is admin or not, then only display the some other information related to user, some other controls, like user can create some user or delete some users or like that. So these are the very simple things over here. Okay, so we will see how exactly it works. Even we have already seen how this if else works. Okay, how this if else works. So this is where this is a very simple things. Okay, even you can this is an array, so you cannot add the expression like this. You cannot add the expression like this. If users, you cannot say users 0, you cannot add the expression like this, but you can add the expression like this. You can say users dot length. You can add the expression like this. If users dot length is so if there is something in user, then length will definitely going to be greater than 0. Okay, that you can add like this, but you cannot have like this user dot 0 dot id is there. No, you cannot like do like that. Over here as well, inside your say that there is some other division. So here you can you cannot also say like this user dot first and user dot last. You can also not put like this, because this is a complex expression and not supported in your LWC. If you say if colon true, okay, you try to put like this user dot first, it is not going to work. Even you will get the error. Okay, so basically it will always accept simple expressions like this, if there is a value in user or not. Or you can say if there is something inside avatar, then only display this image. So you can say, okay, if colon true, if there is something inside image, then only display, otherwise don't display the broken image. Okay, so that kind of thing, that kind of simple check you can put as a if else. We will see, we will talk about Tom and Jerry thing, but before we actually wanted to look how we actually can make a call of a JavaScript method from our Lightning Web Component. Okay, so now let's talk about we have already talked about how to create the functions. Now let's talk about a use case where we have got a button. Okay, let's quickly have a button on the top over here. We have got a button, and under on the click of that button we wanted to call a method of a JavaScript which will do certain tasks. We don't know what currently it will do, but it is going to do certain tasks. So what we will do is we'll have a lightning button over here. We'll say lightning button. Okay, and then we'll have variant. Variant will have various kind of values, but if you wanted to know more about this, I usually use an extension called LWC sort keys. You guys already have installed. So to use a button, you will say LWC colon button. Okay, it is going to give you what are all the values for variant. So if you wanted to have some button which have a green background, use brand. If you wanted to use a button with red background, use destructive. If you wanted to use a brand is for blue background and green is for success background. Okay, so I will use brand, and I'll say the button name is click me. Okay, title is also click me, and this is a method which we are going to call, which is handle click. Again, if you see the method, calling a method and displaying or using a variable, the process is same. You just need to use curly braces and give the name of variable or your method, and we'll say okay, just go ahead. And we have already talked about how to create a variable. Sorry, we will just have how to create a function. Okay, I'll just use prevent default. So this event is also very important attribute we will talk about later on. And here we can just have alert, or instead of alert, I'll just use a console.log, and I will say, okay, the button is clicked. So this is one way we can call a method. Now, sometimes there might be some, say that we have some input, and based on input, you wanted to take whatever the input. Let's say that have an input over here. Okay. Type is text. Okay. Variant is standard. Name could be name, and label it, say that full name. Placeholder is type here. We have nothing. Okay, so if we wanted to bind some value from JavaScript to name, so we'll say okay, we've got some name, and there is have some value called Amit Singh. Okay, this is the initial and default value for this variable called name. And if you wanted to provide default value for input, we'll say okay, go ahead and use value attribute and provide this as a name. Again, this is how we use the variable. So far we have just, now if I type anything in this input, this name variable will not have anything. This name variable will always be having Amit Singh. I will just try to put that name as well. Okay, say console dot log, and I'll say this dot name. I'll tell you what this is. Okay, so now I'm just trying to display this name. Okay, I will also try to put one more console over here without this. Okay, so what I did is I said okay, I have a variable where I don't have any method so far, any event handlers. I have a button where we are saying on the click of this button we are going to call a method which is handle click. So far everyone is good?
Yeah.
Amit, one question.
Yeah.
Like while you are doing that, right, or are if true user dot length, right? So if suppose there is nothing, right, then also it will give right true only, because it will have the length of 0. So can't we put like greater than 0, especially that symbol?
So your doubt is valid, but I'll say it will not work. It will not work. The reason is that if true only accepts the values which are having a valid non-falsy values. Okay, so there are some falsy values in JavaScript. So false values is one is 0, one is blank, one is undefined. Okay, null, false, none, like this. Okay, not these up to here. So if this particular, or if true will find any of these values, it will say you don't have anything, and this particular piece of code will not execute. But your doubt was fine, because people say okay, there is 0, so it will say true, but 0 doesn't actually returns true. That is the concept of JavaScript, which says that 0 comes under false values, and if this is false values, you don't need to do anything.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, yeah. So we have also deployed this code to org. Let's go ahead and refresh our page. And then I'll just go ahead. You see here by default the values as name Amit Singh, and then I'll go ahead into the console. I'll click on name. Okay, I got clicked, and then I got Amit Singh. Okay, the third console is doing nothing. I'll tell you why. Now if I say that I'm just putting Sivang Tomar. Okay, if I just put name and I click again, it is showing me the itself. It says that okay, you have Amit Singh, but what I did is I typed Sivang Tomar. But what happens in HTML in this is not like two-way binding, this is only one-way binding. So if I type something in HTML text, it will remain to HTML. If I want these values to traverse to JavaScript, I need to add some event handler like on change or on I can say that on click, on key up, on key down, so that I can assign whatever the user is typing. I can assign and store into a variable, whatever variable I have. Okay. So now to do that, in most of the cases in our input, we use on change. Okay. And on change, we need to use a method. So we'll say that handle input change. Okay. I'll just go ahead and create this method over here. So this particular event, what exactly where this is being used? So there is a variable inside event. So if you say event.target, okay, or if you say event.current target, there are two variables basically. If you say event.current target, so this particular variable target or current target property inside event object actually returns this whole HTML for you. Okay, and then under this HTML you can access any element like label or placeholder or name or whatever the value is there, what is a type, what is a method, you can access everything. Okay, so what you can do is you wanted to access the attribute. Okay, so let's say that we have got target and we'll say event.target. Okay, this target is going to give you the HTML. So now let's quickly have the console for that. So the console.log and we will say the target. Okay, now we wanted to get the value. What we actually are looking for is our main purpose is to get the value whatever user is typing. So and then store inside a variable called name. Okay, now this name variable is a class variable. Okay, this is not a local variable. This variable is not declared inside a variable or not outside the variable, outside the class. Okay, not inside a function, not outside a class. So whenever we wanted to access the class level variables, we will always use this. Okay, this keyword in JavaScript actually refers to something else, but when we talk about LWC, this keyword refers to your particular components folder where you are working in. Okay, so we will say that that means refers to this component. There is a variable called name. Under that name we wanted to assign some value which is target.value, so whatever the value user has typed. Okay, now let's say that we wanted to also print some say that what is a label of our target. Okay, we can also display that. So we'll say okay, go ahead console this dot name, and then we'll say that okay, console.log, and I'll say target dot label. So it is going to give us the full name. Now if you see over here under this particular variable which is handle click, we are trying to use a name variable which is not defined. When we say that not defined, that means inside this method that variable is not defined. That's why this was just printing nothing. It was just printing undefined. Now if you wanted to declare a variable inside this JavaScript method which will only last inside this method, you can declare the variable either using let or const or var. these are the variable defining keywords, which I think Kiran or Manan was asking in the previous session. So if you wanted to create a variable, say that I wanted to create a variable called welcome message, and then welcome to Lightning Web Component, and then I can print this particular message over here. But this message will never be accessible outside of this particular method, this variable. So this is the difference between your local variable inside your method and the class level variable. Even if you declare some variable over here, you will say that const message, and you put some message over here, hello world. This variable can also be accessible without using any this keyword. So you will say, okay, console.log, and you just need to use message like this. You don't need to use this keyword because that variable is defined outside of your Epis class. Sorry, not Epis class, your JavaScript class. So this is how your this particular this event variable works, how benefit it is, and this is also how we can use this. Even we have got on chains, you can also use like on key up. Okay, you've got some on key up, so you can also have like on key up, you can put the same method. There is something on focus. Yeah, I think there is something on focus. You can also call the method. Okay, and we'll deploy it. So depend on what your requirement is, you can add the browser events over here. These are basically browser events. There are tons of browser events, and some related to media, some related to input, some related to cursor. That kind of information is there. So
Amit,
yep.
line number 67 in JavaScript, the target name is defined wrong actually. 69 in the console log.
Okay. Okay, so we have deployed this latest changes, and we need to refresh this. So now if I change to whatever it was earlier, okay, you see here, basically whatever I'm typing over here in the console, you can see, right? So let me quickly clear it. Okay, I'll say as soon as I focus on the input, because there was something called on focus, that's why I got the proxy, which was completely my HTML tag. Then I've got the name, what is there, and then what is the label, full name. If I type anything, say that whatever key up is there, then we have on change, so we are able to get the information. Now if I go ahead and click on click me, I will say, okay, we've got Sivang Tomar, full name, clicked again, Sivang Tomar, welcome to Lightning Web Component, hello world. Okay, so basically this is how exactly it happens. That is how we usually calls the JavaScript class methods from our Lightning Web Component. Now here we can have multiple inputs. What are all the inputs? For that you can just go to Lightning Web Component library. So this is the place where you will get the tags related to Lightning Web Component as well as your Aura components. And these tags are very important because under this Lightning Web Component, you will get Lightning tags. Okay, so you will say multiple things: accordion, sections, buttons, button icons, even card, carousel images. Then you will get some data tables, combo box, which is important for pick list and we'll be using for your assignment purpose. Okay, and then you've got formatted. This is for output, for displaying the icons, displaying the address, taking the input. So you can just go through with these. Okay, just whatever the component you wanted to check, if you click, and here on the right hand side you will see the outcome. Okay, so this is a pick list. Okay, say that let's quickly talk about first what else we have. We have got this. Okay, we have something called getter setters. Okay, before getter setters we had one thing which says that Tom and Jerry. Okay, so let's quickly find out Tom and Jerry images. Okay, first I'll find Tom images. Okay, so here we have got Seri. Okay, let's go ahead, open images, new tab. Okay, that's fine. And then we need Tom. Okay, that is also fine. So if I remove the rest of the part from URL, will it work? Yes. Okay, so now we have got two images. Okay, so what we will do is we'll have a button, and based on a button click, we will display either Tom or Zeri. Okay, so let's quickly create one more component. I'll just create one more component and we'll say Tom Zeri. So here let's have a variable. We'll say that so Tom Zeri. By default it is false. Okay, and then we will say toggle values. And we'll say this. So by default, let's quickly say so Tom and Zeri. If it is true, okay. If true, display Tom. If false, display Zeri. Okay. So if the variable is false, then we are going to display Tom. If the variable is true, then we are going to display. This is what we are going to display. Display Tom if I need to put if true. Okay. So now what we are doing is over here in toggle values, we are saying whatever the value you have inside this Boolean, just invert that. Okay, invert that means if we have got, let's say if it is true, then the value will be assigned as false. If the value is false, then the value will be assigned as true in this variable, so Tom Seri. Okay, and then in our HTML here, we are going to have HTML. Let's have a division, and we will use again one image. Okay, not image, we'll have one button because we wanted to call that method. So I'll say LWC button. And then we will have one image below that. So here what we will have is we'll have image, not iframe, we'll have image. And then we will say if the value for Tom and Zeri is true, then what we wanted to display is we wanted to display Tom. Okay, so we'll just go ahead and copy the image for Tom, and then for image URL src where we will put this. Then we will copy the same tag over here and we will say if the value is false, if the value is false inside this variable. Now you can see here, right, we are using both the directive true and false. Then we will display Zeri. And then like previous component, I'm going to use the class for my division so that I can have the spaces all around. So here up to here, everyone is okay. Any doubts? Anyone having?
No.
No, Amit.
Okay, so again, we'll just deploy this component to org. Once the component is deployed, we will use that component in our Hora application. And then we will see the trick. Okay, so this is deployed. I'll just copy this Tom Zeri component or application. I'll change over here and save it. So by default, the value is true, right? By default, the value is true, so that we are able to see Tom over here. If we toggle it, we will see Zeri. Okay, even we haven't set the width and height, but if you see, that is basically how your if and else works. So if you wanted to set the Width and height, you can also set width and height for your say we wanted to set 300 as a width and height as a 300 for both the images. And then push it. So what will happen, basically based on this defined height, we will be able to see the details. Now there is one concept which is pending, is getter setter. Okay, so getter setters basically are nothing. With the help of a getter we can create a variable. With the help of a setter we can also basically for every getter we can have setter, or in other word, if I say every setter method will always have a getter variable. Okay, so when we use, basically when we use this get and set. Okay, when we use this get and set, so every time when we wanted to execute a logic, whenever the value of a property is changing, then we need to use a custom setter method. For example, I'll show you over here first I will show you the example, then I will tell you how to create that. Okay, because that will be easy to make you understand. So basically this is a component which is displaying the images of the dogs based on the selected breed. Okay, by default it is displaying the image of a dog which is selected as a Labrador. Okay, here I have got a list of breeds of the dog. Okay, so now if I wanted to make any logic, if I wanted to execute some piece of code, whenever I change the value of this particular pick list value, then we need to use setter method. So if you see here, as soon as I change whatever the breed of a dog, I'm just selecting a random image, a random breed, and then dogs images are getting changed over here. Okay, so basically this component is developed with the help of some advanced JavaScript concept, but we are using getter and setter for our LWC. So that is where we need to use our getter and setter in Lightning Web Component. This is just a simple example you will see over here. You see here we've got a getter variable which says that item name, and this is just returning this dot uppercase item. Okay, this is where uppercase item. Then there is some setter method for the same variable, which setter method will always accept minimum one parameter. Okay, you cannot have setter method without a parameter. It will always accept minimum one parameter or minimum one argument. And here what we are doing is we are saying, okay, go ahead and change the value of this dot uppercase item to whatever the value we are receiving and make it as uppercase. So as soon as we execute this particular method, this method will automatically get executed. Get method will automatically get executed. That's what we said. If we wanted to execute some logic, every time a property changes, there is one hidden thing over here, is the property. This property must be used in HTML component. If you're not referring this inside HTML component, this particular getter will not get executed. Setter will get executed, but getter will never get executed. So we need to make sure we are using this getter variable inside our HTML component. So let's quickly see how exactly it will work. We'll see the same component over here. Okay, I will create one component. We'll say getter setter. So here what we will have is, we will have a simple variable. We'll say that get, again I'm using the same thing. Okay, item name, and then I'll say set item name. It is going to take the value, and then here let's quickly have one variable. We'll say that uppercase item. So get method will always return something. It might be a string, it might be integer, list of records, list of arrays, but it will always return. The getter method will always return something. And what we are doing inside setter method is we are just saying, okay, this dot uppercase item equal to value dot to uppercase. Okay, then we will have one method which will say that handle click, and then handle click is going to, what it is going to do is it is going to change the value. Okay, it is going to change the value of this particular item name. It is going to call this method. So how we will call is, we will say that this dot item name equal to, and here we will have, we don't have a variable, so we will have a variable. We'll say that event dot, sorry, event is a variable, and here we will say event dot target dot value. So whatever the value we will be having. Okay, instead of handle click, let's quickly have handle input change. So every time an input is changing in the lightning input box, we will be calling this setter method. Okay, and then this setter method will be assigning a value to a property. As soon as this setter method will be called, this getter method will also get called, and then the outcome will be displayed. Let's quickly have a method over here. We'll say that console.log getter called. Okay, let's quickly go to our HTML file. Into our HTML, we'll have some division over here. Okay, so we've got a division over here, and then instead of we have to display information. Okay, so we'll say that value is, and then we will, how we will use is, again, every getter method is nothing, it's a variable. It does create a variable. So here the name of our getter method is item name, so it is a variable, it is a class label variable. So we will just go ahead and access like the way we access the other values. Okay, sorry, other variables. And then we will have a input over here. So let's quickly have one input box over here. Again, type is text, variant is standard, name could be anything. I'm just going to remove this name, and label, I will say type here, and value, if I wanted to have something, I can just assign it to this particular. Okay, not like this, I'll say value. Even if you don't have something, that's perfectly fine. Okay, we just need to have on change, so we'll say on change, and then our JavaScript method, which is handle input change. By default, let's assign some value over here. Uppercase item 2 will say, okay, Tom. Okay, go ahead and, okay, we need to deploy this. So to deploy this, we will use the same command, push source to scratch all. So now just go ahead and think in our developer component, we just need to change it. And as soon as we change it, it is going to display the outcome of our new component. So by default, it is Tom. And if I say whatever I type, it is going to change. So as soon as I'm typing, this value is getting changed. And if you see over here, console to the console, you can see here getter called. How many times the getter has been called? Okay, I'm saying Salesforce architect. You can see here, and if I change welcome to whatever I type, the getter is being called every time the value of item. Okay, the value, every time I'm changing the value of this property, which is this dot item name, not this particular property. Okay, this line is doing the trick. So every time I'm changing, and if I don't have a setter, okay, let me quickly remove this, and I'll show you. If I don't have a setter for the getter, and then I try to access like this, I try to assign a value. Okay, I try to assign a value in a getter which doesn't have a setter. Let's see what will happen. So we'll just go ahead and refresh this. And if I type anything, you can see here I've got the error. It says that cannot set property item name of object which has only a getter. That means it doesn't have a setter property. So we have to make sure that we have a setter So we have to use this setter. So that is whenever I'm saying that assign whatever the value is there in the input box to a variable called this dot item name, this is actually referring to a setter variable. Now there could be a getter without setter. Okay, say that we've got some getter which is just returning some options. Okay, now what are options? This is returning an array with some label and whatever I've got. Okay, so say that we've got some labels Tom and Jerry. Okay, this is the option. This getter will work perfectly fine, but as soon as I try to assign some value to this get options, then I'll get the error. Okay, now when this kind of getters are useful when we wanted to create a pick list field. Okay, so to create a pick list field, we have already discussed while we were referring to this component, which is that combo box. Combo box is going to create a pick list field. Okay, for you, you see here, this is a pick list field. So we'll just go ahead and copy this. And let's have one more division. And put it over here. Okay, now we don't need this on change, we don't need this value. This is progress. Okay, it says that select progress, or we'll say that select character, select chart type, not chart type, select character. Okay, what are the options? What options we wanted to display to the user? So this is a variable, this is options, right? I can say char options. I can just name it anything. I'll say char options. I'll just go ahead and use this as a options. This particular pick list will act as an option over here, and then I can have a value over here if I want. If I don't want, I can have a different method. Okay, I say I will have on change, and I can say handle pick list change, and then this is a method over here. Okay, and then I can just do a console log over here. Whatever the value is selected, it will display in the console log. So I'll just go ahead and deploy the source. So basically that is how we go ahead and prepare these things, prepare the getters, use the getters, and create a pick list value. So we have just deployed it. We'll go ahead and refresh this. Okay, there is. Okay, I think I have used at in a different HTML. I need to use over here. And then I also have already have the options. So just go ahead, post the code. One thing I would like to tell you, when you are preparing a pick list value, label and value will always be type of a string. If you are trying to give some other values like numbers, your pick list will be have very wide. So you just need to make sure that whatever the label and values you are preparing over is, it is a type of a string. Even if you need to put the numbers, use a string and then use the methods like integer dot value of or parse int to convert that string into the number. So now you can see here, select class. If I select Jerry, okay, I got cannot read properties of undefined. So there is some error in, I think, on change method. That's fine. I believe the method is defined somewhere else. Yes, the method is defined over here inside Tom and Jerry. Okay, so that's why we're not, we were getting the error. So basically that is how your pick list values works. Okay, you can have the pick list value in your component as well. If you want to take the input, the other inputs, you can just go ahead, find that Lightning component library. You can have the other inputs like you have input name, input rich text, then you have got otherwise all kind of inputs are there inside this input. Okay, if you select input on the example, you will see multiple inputs like type date, date time, time advanced, color, file. So there are type of inputs under the same input. You can select that. So with that, we come to the assignment. As an assignment, what you guys need to do is you need to go ahead and create a Lightning Web component with the below inputs: task name, task priority, which is going to have the 3 values as a pick list: low, medium, and high. And then there is a button, custom button, add to list. Okay, so when a user click on add to list, add the task to the list. Okay, add the task to the list in an array. Basically, there will be a variable called task array or task list, and then you need to add whatever the task user has uh, say that provided over here, and then the task should also be displayed on the same concept, same component below. Okay, so by default, when your component will render, there will be nothing. But if user provides some values and click on a button, then the components, the task should be rendered below that. Every single task should be rendered. This is a simple screen how your assignment outcome will look like. There will be a description, basically that is going to be name of your task, priority, the button add to list, and this is how the task will be displayed below. And then at the end, these are the questions that you guys have to ask yourself.